The social lens of learning, I look at it as though the students speak about what they're learning and they have an interaction with each other as they are learning, testing out and embedding that knowledge in their brains. So they bounce ideas off of each other and they learn from that.
The social lens of learning is basically giving the class the feel of a community, giving them the chance to interact with each other. As a science teacher, it's very easy for me because we have lab groups and they form their own little families. It gives them a chance to not only learn from myself, but it also gives them a chance to learn from each other as well.
The social lens of learning to me means collaboration. Students are social. Students behave the way they want to behave because we are social beings. I think it's so important to allow students to share what it is that they're thinking about, to share what they're thinking after they read something, and to share after they write something. Using a concept of sharing and of being social helps aid so much in comprehension.
Chaos. I love it because it's controlled chaos. You have students moving about, they're sharing things, they're discussing, especially when you get something that's maybe a little controversial, and they begin to discuss their different views, and all of a sudden you find out that, hey, you got these little mini adults running around, and they really get into it.
It looks like on certain days, a lot of movement, controlled movement. The kids have a purpose. They are going to either small groups. They're moving to different parts of the classroom. I have my classroom set up. I have what's called the conference center, which are just big tables with semi-nice chairs, or the nicest chairs I could find in the building, but it's just a little bit different. The kids can go back there and work in groups. Even just them moving out of the traditional desk and interacting, walking to a certain spot of the classroom seems to ease some of the tension. They feel part of it, but they do get to work. And that was one of the toughest things for me to do, is to trust the process of letting kids get out of their seats, move into groups, group work, so to speak. And that was the big one for me, but it seems to be working well.
Group work, sharing ideas, the idea of discussions. They come in with a type 3 with their stuff ready to go. So they bring ideas to the table. I join the community as well, more as like a devil's advocate, and I bring the opposing side, so kids have to respond back. And it's actually pretty cool to see the different types of students that are involved with the, like I said, classroom community.
The social lens looks like sometimes the think, pair, share, but I like to go beyond that as well. I don't like to just be so routine with it. Social learning has a lot to do with, okay, class, all of you get together and talk about this. Or it can be sporadic because sometimes students think sporadically. So I've broken away from the structure a lot, and if we keep it kind of sporadic, kind of safari-like, where our brains get to wander and discuss things, I find that they are more interested in what they're doing, and they learn it a little bit better as well.
In my classroom, there's a lot of pair sharing. My desks are tables, so there's always two kids that are working together. Everybody has a partner that they feel comfortable with, that they're willing to share their ideas with. They don't feel like they're going to be judged. It's just a way for them to let out what they're thinking and they're feeling as they're learning.
In a way, it almost looks chaotic sometimes, but I know that learning's happening, and I know when when learning's occurring. It usually looks kind of like our lab groups, whether it's we're actually in the lab doing a lab or we're doing some sort of group project. It's giving the students the opportunity to work with each other and actually be able to learn from each other, not only myself.
I was probably the one that needed a lot of tips and suggestions. I like to be on the stage, and it takes you off the stage, and at first you think, oh, I'm not doing my job. If I'm not talking and telling them things, it's probably just I'm a horrible teacher. But I guess trust the process of those kids going into groups and discussing their writing, reading their writing, debating with each other. And what's nice now is the kids I'm getting in the high school have now been doing it for 2, 3, maybe some even 4 years. So they know the expectations. They've gone through other PLN teachers, and they just kind of show up and do it. It's almost too easy.
Don't be afraid to let your students move around the classroom and interact with one another. Don't let your students fall back from their possible learning opportunities just because you're afraid to let them speak. Let your classroom be loud. Trust them that they will meet your expectations.
Biggest tip I can tell you is don't try to over control the situation. Let the students be students. Let them focus on collaborating with one another. Noise level, get used to it. It's going to be a little louder than what, typical teaching had always been, but it is so interactive and it is so positive.
I just think that just try it and don't sit back. You have to get involved because they will get off task. And sometimes when you think that they understand what they're supposed to be doing, they don't really understand what they're supposed to be doing. And oftentimes I have to stop the conversation and say, no, this is what I wanted you to do. You have to clarify. But just try it. I think you will see kids, when the bell rings, the kids are like, wow, is it done already? And I always say, time flies when you're having fun. And they are.
You have to trust in your classroom management. You have to be able to let the kids go out there a little bit. If you do have a bigger group, some of my classes are 20, which is nice. I have 2 classes that are 30. One has 31 in it. So it's a little bit more difficult to manage when you have that many students. You have to trust and keep on top of them and move around the room a lot.
When you're using the social, it's very important that you have good classroom management skills because they can get out of control. So if you start out a little bit and then you gradually ease up your restraints as you feel more comfortable and students feel more comfortable and they're used to doing what you're asking them to do, it becomes much more easier that that's just the way your class is. Turn and talk for 2 minutes. They're actually talking about what you're saying, but at the beginning you might have to say turn and talk for 30 seconds and then move on to the next thing until they get used to doing what you're asking.
Be flexible. Expect it not to work the first couple times you go through, at least not the way you think it should work. And just kind of go with it. You have to be flexible. You have to let things kind of develop naturally in some ways. You'll learn what works and what doesn't, what groupings work, what groupings don't work. And it gives, you have to give yourself time to adjust to it, probably as much as you have to give the kids time to adjust to it.
If you think back on what you take from your schooling, what do you remember the most? It certainly wasn't the tests that you had to do. It certainly wasn't the report. It was probably the conversations that you had in class and the connections you made with other students or the teacher. And that's where the learning is going to be retained in those kind of situations.
Just daily collaboration. If you think about businesses nowadays in the real world, you have to collaborate. It's not a one-man show and a lot of different jobs that are out there. You have to collaborate. So if they can do that 180 days in a school year, I think that's a pretty good year.
I would say don't be afraid to let the kids talk. The biggest tip is have your classroom management established very well in the beginning of school year, and then kind of let them talk a little more and a little more and a little more. And then it develops into where you have a classroom where students are not afraid to share and they get along well and they give each other ideas, and the learning commences from there. It becomes really a student-led classroom.
If you're going to attempt the social lens, you have to have your classroom management intact. You have to know and have an understanding of what your expectations are, and that has to be very clear to your students. If not, I think that the students and the teacher will both be very frustrated with this model. Establish your classroom management, trust yourself and your students when using the social lens.